The Chess Master of Crime. Chapter 1: Beginnings and Shadows. In the dimly lit backstreets of New York's Lower East Side, a young man named Antonio Tony Campana began his journey into the dark underworld of organized crime. Born to Italian immigrants in 1928, Tony grew up amidst the shadows of poverty and hardship. His father, a dock worker, struggled to provide for the family while his mother worked tirelessly as a seamstress. The Campanas lived in a cramped apartment where the walls were thin and the cries of other struggling families echoed through the halls. From an early age, Tony learned that survival in this world required a blend of cunning, strength, and an unbreakable spirit. Tony's childhood was marked by frequent fights and brushes with the law. Despite his small stature, he possessed a fierce determination and natural talent for street fighting. The neighborhood was a battleground, with various ethnic groups vying for dominance. Italian, Irish, and Jewish gangs roamed the streets, and Tony had to be tough to survive. He quickly learned the value of alliances, forming bonds with other Italian boys who shared his desire to rise above their circumstances. It was during one such altercation that he caught the eye of Vito the Lion Moranzano, a local mobster with an astute sense for talent. Vito saw potential in Tony, a raw, untamed force that could be molded into something formidable. Tony was only 16 when Vito first approached him, offering him a way out of his seemingly predestined life of mediocrity and struggle. Vito saw in Tony a reflection of his younger self, ambitious, cunning, and unafraid to get his hands dirty. Vito began to mentor Tony, teaching him the unspoken rules of the underworld. He showed Tony how to navigate the intricate web of loyalties and rivalries that defined their world. Tony learned the importance of discretion, the art of negotiation, and the necessity of swift, decisive action. Vito's lessons extended beyond mere survival. He instilled in Tony a vision of power and influence that could be attained through intelligence and strategic thinking. Chapter 2: The Oath. Tony's induction into the Moranzano crime family at 18 was a pivotal moment in his life. The ceremony was held in the basement of a nondescript restaurant, an unassuming location that belied the gravity of the occasion. The room was dimly lit, filled with the smell of cigar smoke and the low murmur of conversations. Senior members of the family, dressed in their finest suits, surrounded a small table draped with a black cloth. On the table lay a knife, a piece of paper with a saint's image, and a small bowl. With a drop of blood and a burning card, Tony swore an oath of loyalty to Vito and the family. The ritual was solemn and symbolic, binding Tony to the Maranzano family with an unbreakable bond. As the card burned, its ashes mingled with the blood, signifying Tony's commitment to the family above all else. From that day forward, he was no longer just Tony Campana. He was now Tony the Fox Campana, a moniker that would soon become synonymous with cunning and ruthlessness. Tony's early years in the family were spent as an enforcer, handling the dirty work that others shied away from. His tasks were varied and often brutal, collecting debts from reluctant borrowers, intimidating rival gang members, and sometimes eliminating threats to the family's interests. Tony quickly became known for his efficiency and lack of hesitation. He approached each assignment with a cold, calculating mindset, ensuring that his actions left a lasting impression on those who crossed the Maranzano family. The streets became Tony's domain, and he thrived in the dangerous environment. He developed a reputation for his strategic mind and ability to remain calm under pressure. His small stature was deceptive. Opponents often underestimated him, only to find themselves outmaneuvered and overpowered. His rise through the ranks was swift, fueled by a combination of fear and respect. Tony's success in the early years solidified his standing within the family, and Vito's trust in him grew stronger. Vito took a personal interest in Tony, mentoring him and grooming him for greater responsibilities. Vito saw in Tony a potential successor, someone who could carry on his legacy and ensure the family's continued dominance. Tony's loyalty to Vito was unwavering, and he viewed Vito as both a father figure and a guiding force in his life. The bond between them was one of mutual respect and shared ambition, and it became the foundation of Tony's future within the Maranzano family. Chapter 3: Expanding Influence. As the years passed, Tony's influence within the Maranzano family grew. He developed a keen understanding of the inner workings of the organization, from the smuggling routes to the money laundering operations. Tony's ability to navigate the complex web of criminal activities while avoiding the prying eyes of law enforcement set him apart from his peers. He learned to exploit every weakness, turning adversaries into allies and using his sharp intellect to foresee and neutralize threats before they could materialize. One of Tony's most significant accomplishments was orchestrating a series of heists that netted the family millions. These meticulously planned operations involved bribing officials, hijacking security systems, and executing flawless getaways. Each success further solidified Tony's reputation as a master strategist and earned him the trust of Vito and the other high-ranking members of the family. These heists were not mere robberies, but complex operations involving multiple teams, precise timing, and an intricate network of informants and collaborators. With power, however, came enemies. Rival families, envious of Tony's success, sought to undermine him at every turn. There were attempts on his life, betrayals from within, and constant pressure from the police. Yet, Tony thrived in this environment of chaos and danger. He was always one step ahead, anticipating threats and neutralizing them before they could do any real damage. His survival instincts were honed to a razor's edge, and he used every resource at his disposal to maintain his edge over his adversaries. By the late 1950s, Tony had become Vito's most trusted advisor. He was involved in every major decision, from territorial disputes to high-level negotiations with other crime families. Tony's counsel was invaluable, and his influence extended far beyond the Maranzano family. He forged alliances with powerful figures in politics, law enforcement, and business, creating a network of connections that protected the family's interests and expanded their reach. Tony's rise to power was not without sacrifice, however. He maintained a facade of normalcy, marrying a local girl and starting a family, but his true alliance was always to the Maranzano family. His wife and children were shielded from his criminal activities, living in a bubble of ignorance and comfort that Tony meticulously maintained. This dual life took its toll on Tony, creating a chasm between his public persona and his true self. Despite these challenges, though, Tony remained focused on his ultimate goal: to become a head of the Maranzano family. He knew that Vito's reign would not last forever, and he positioned himself as the natural successor. Through a combination of loyalty, manipulation, and sheer force of will, Tony eliminated his rivals and consolidated his power within the family. Chapter 4: Trusted Advisor. The turning point in Tony's career came when he was tasked with overseeing the family's gambling operations. The profits from these ventures were astronomical, but so were the risks. Tony understood that to maintain control, he needed to ensure that the operations ran smoothly and without interference from law enforcement or rival factions. He implemented a system of strict discipline and accountability, ensuring that every member of the operation knew their role and the consequences of failure. This meticulous attention to detail paid off, and the family's gambling empire flourished under Tony's leadership. Tony's success in managing the gambling operation did not go unnoticed. He was soon entrusted with overseeing the family's narcotics distribution network. This was a far more dangerous and complex undertaking, requiring delicate negotiations with international suppliers and ruthless enforcement of territorial boundaries. Tony proved to be up to the task, using his connections and strategic mind to navigate the treacherous waters of the drug trade. He established secure routes for smuggling narcotics into the country and developed sophisticated methods for laundering the proceeds. Under his guidance, the family's drug operation became one of their most lucrative enterprises. Managing the narcotics network required Tony to travel frequently, meeting with suppliers in South America and coordinating shipments across international borders. These trips were perilous, involving covert operations and high-stakes negotiations. Tony's fluency in multiple languages and his ability to read people made him an effective negotiator. He built relationships with powerful drug lords, earning their trust and respect through his professionalism and reliability. Tony also had to ensure that the drugs moved through the city's neighborhoods smoothly. He appointed trusted lieutenants to oversee different sectors, each responsible for maintaining order and maximizing profits. Tony's leadership style was hands-on. He frequently visited the various operations, ensuring that everything ran like a well-oiled machine. He understood that complacency could lead to disaster, so he kept his lieutenants on their toes, demanding accountability and results. Chapter 5: Narcotics and Paranoia. However, with increased power and wealth came greater scrutiny from law enforcement. Tony was constantly on guard, using his network of informants to stay one step ahead of the authorities. He knew that any slip-up could lead to his downfall, so he maintained a rigorous routine of counter-surveillance and used a series of safe houses to avoid detection. His paranoia paid off as he managed to avoid several major investigations that could have brought down the entire organization. Tony's ability to evade law enforcement was partly due to his strategic alliances within the political and legal systems. He cultivated relationships with corrupt officials, offering bribes and favors in exchange of information and protection. These connections provided Tony with an early warning system, alerting him to impeding raids and investigations. He used his information to stay ahead of the authorities, constantly moving and adapting his operations to avoid capture. Despite these precautions, Tony's life was a constant battle against unseen enemies. He became increasingly paranoid, trusting only a handful of close associates. His home was fortified with the latest security measures, and he employed a team of bodyguards to ensure his safety. Tony rarely stayed in one place for long, always on the move to stay ahead of potential threats. The pressure of living this way took a toll on him, but he knew that it was the price of maintaining his position at the top. Tony's paranoia extended to his inner circle as well. He understood that betrayal could come from anywhere, even from those he trusted the most. He conducted regular loyalty tests, using spies to monitor his lieutenants and gather information on their activities. Tony's approach was ruthless. Anyone suspected of disloyalty was dealt with swiftly and without mercy. This created an atmosphere of fear and tension within the organization, but it also ensured that Tony's authority remained unchallenged. The narcotics trade brought immense wealth to the Maranzano family, but it also came with significant risks. Rival gangs and crime families sought to encroach on their territory, leading to violent clashes and turf wars. Tony's strategic mind was crucial in these conflicts, as he used a combination of diplomacy and force to maintain the family's dominance. He brokered deals with rival leaders, creating alliances that benefited all parties involved. When diplomacy failed, Tony was not afraid to use violence to protect his interests. Chapter 6: Ambition and Conflict. By the early 1960s, Tony had achieved a level of influence that few could rival. However, his ambition knew no bounds. He set his sights on the ultimate prize, the leadership of the New York Mafia. To achieve this, he needed to eliminate the most powerful and respected figure in the Mafia world, Franco the Bull Morello, the head of the Morello family. Tony's plan was audacious and fraught with risk. He knew that an open confrontation with Franco would lead to a bloody war that could destroy everything he had built. Instead, he opted for a more subtle approach. Through a series of carefully orchestrated moves, Tony sowed discord within the Morello family, exploiting weaknesses and turning Franco's closest allies against him. He orchestrated financial setbacks, planted false evidence, and manipulated key figures within the organization to create an environment of mistrust and paranoia. The assassination attempt on Franco was the culmination of years of planning and manipulation. Tony chose a quiet evening in May when Franco was returning to his apartment in the upscale Upper East Side. As Franco stepped out of the car, a lone gunman emerged from the shadows and fired. The shot missed its mark, grazing Franco's head and causing him to collapse, but not killing him. The gunman fled, disappearing into the night, leaving behind a shaken but alive Franco Morello. The failed assassination attempt sent shockwaves through the Mafia world. Franco, though wounded, survived and swiftly sought revenge. Tony's involvement in the plot was suspected, but no concrete evidence could be found. The Maranzano family came under intense scrutiny, and the fragile alliances Tony had built began to fracture under the pressure. Despite the setback, Tony remained unyielding. He knew that his enemies would use this opportunity to strike, and he prepared for the inevitable confrontation. The next few months were marked by a series of violent clashes between the Maranzano family and the Morello, each seeking to assert dominance and settle old scores. Tony's cunning and resilience were put to the test as he navigated this turbulent period. He employed every tactic at his disposal: bribery, blackmail, to outright intimidation, to maintain his position and protect his family. Through it all, he never lost sight of his ultimate goal: to rise to the pinnacle of the Mafia hierarchy. Chapter 7: Diplomacy and Alliances. Tony knew that maintaining his grip on power required not just force, but also diplomacy. He began reaching out to other influential figures within the Mafia, proposing alliances and mutually beneficial arrangements. He used his charm and strategic mind to win over key players, turning potential adversaries into allies. Tony's ability to build and maintain these relationships was crucial in stabilizing his position and expanding his influence. One of Tony's most notable alliances was with Carlo the Brain Vitale, the head of a powerful crime family in Chicago. Carlo was known for his intelligence and strategic thinking, and he recognized the potential benefits of aligning with Tony. The two men developed a strong partnership, sharing resources and information to strengthen their respective operations. This alliance not only bolstered Tony's position, but also provided him with valuable insights into the broader landscape of organized crime in the United States. As Tony's power grew, so did his need for discretion. He understood that his enemies were always watching, waiting for any sign of weakness. To protect himself and his operations, Tony implemented a series of measures to ensure his security. He surrounded himself with a loyal and highly trained security team, employing former military personnel and law enforcement officers who were skilled in counter-surveillance and protection. Tony also established a network of safe houses and secret meeting locations, allowing him to move undetected and conduct his business without fear of interception. Chapter 8: Vigilance and Innovation. Despite these precautions, Tony remained ever vigilant. He knew that the slightest mistake could lead to his downfall, so he continued to refine his strategies and adapt to the changing landscape of organized crime. He invested in new technologies and methods to stay ahead of law enforcement, constantly seeking ways to innovate and improve his operations. Tony's relentless pursuit of excellence ensured that he remained a step ahead of his rivals and maintained his position at the top. Tony's rise to power was not without personal cost. The duality of his life, the loving family man and the ruthless mobster, created a constant tension that he struggled to reconcile. He cared deeply for his wife and children, but he knew that his involvement in the criminal underworld put them at risk. To protect them, he kept his personal and professional lives strictly separate, ensuring that his family was never exposed to the danger of his world. This separation, however, was not easy, and it weighed heavily on Tony. He longed for the simplicity of a normal life, free from the constant threats and deception that defined his existence. But he also knew that he could never truly escape the world he had built. The power and influence he wielded were intoxicating, and the thought of relinquishing them was unbearable. So, Tony continued to walk the tightrope, balancing his roles as a father, husband, and crime lord always aware of the precariousness of his position. Chapter 9: Building a Legacy. Tony's legacy was further solidified through his involvement in various legitimate business ventures. He understood that diversification was key to long-term success, and he invested heavily in real estate, entertainment, and other industries. These legitimate enterprises not only provided a steady stream of income, but also served as a front for his criminal activities. By blending legitimate and illicit operations, Tony created a complex web of businesses that was difficult for law enforcement to untangle. Through these ventures, Tony also sought to give back to the community. He funded local schools, hospitals, and charities, earning a reputation as a benevolent benefactor among the people of New York. This philanthropic work was part of Tony's strategy to maintain a positive public image and build goodwill, but it also reflected his genuine desire to make a difference. Despite his criminal activities, Tony never lost sight of his roots and the struggles of the people in his community. One of the most significant ventures Tony undertook was the development of a chain of high-end restaurants and nightclubs. These establishments became popular hotspots for celebrities and influential figures, further cementing Tony's status in high society. He used these venues not only to generate legitimate income, but also as a place to conduct discreet meetings and negotiations. The upscale nature of these businesses allowed Tony to mingle with the city's elite, forging connections that proved invaluable in his operations. As Tony's legitimate empire grew, so did his influence in the political arena. He began to financially support various political campaigns, ensuring that key officials remained sympathetic to his interests. This involvement in politics provided Tony with a layer of protection, as he could call upon his political allies to fend off legal challenges and investigations. His contributions to the community and strategic political alliances made Tony an untouchable figure in many respects. Chapter 10: Shaping Power. Tony's involvement in politics extended beyond mere financial contributions. He began to cultivate relationships with up-and-coming politicians, offering them support and guidance in exchange for their loyalty. This network of political allies allowed Tony to shape policy decisions and ensure that laws and regulations favored his business interests. Through these efforts, Tony effectively created a shadow government, manipulating the levers of power to his advantage. As Tony's power and influence continued to grow, he faced new challenges from within his own organization. Ambitious underlings sought to challenge his authority, believing that they could usurp his position. Tony dealt with these threats swiftly and decisively, as he was used to, using a combination of charm, intimidation, and strategic violence to maintain his grip on power. He understood that any sign of weakness could lead to his downfall, so he ensured that his subordinates remained loyal and obedient. One such challenge came from a young and ambitious lieutenant named Marco Rizzo. Marco had gathered a following within the organization and believed that he could overthrow Tony and take control of the Maranzano family. Tony, aware of Marco's intentions, devised a plan to neutralize the threat. He invited Marco to a private meeting under the pretense of discussing a lucrative business opportunity. During the meeting, Tony laid out his suspicions and offered Marco a choice: loyalty or death. Marco, realizing the futility of his ambitions, chose loyalty and pledged his unwavering support to Tony. Chapter 11: Maintaining Unity. Tony's ability to quell internal dissent and maintain unity within the organization was a testament to his leadership skills. He understood that a divided family was a vulnerable one, so he made it a priority to address grievances and foster a sense of loyalty and camaraderie among his subordinates. He frequently held gatherings and celebrations, reinforcing the bonds of brotherhood that held the family together. These efforts paid off, as the Maranzano family remained a cohesive and formidable force under Tony's leadership. As Tony approached the zenith of his power, he began to reflect on his legacy and what he wanted to leave behind. He understood that his life was fraught with danger and that his time at the top could be cut short at any moment. To ensure the continuity of his empire, Tony began to groom his eldest son, Vincent, to take over the family business. Vincent, a sharp and ambitious young man, had been kept in the dark about his father's true occupation for most of his life. However, as he grew older, Tony began to slowly introduce him to the intricacies of the organization. Tony's relationship with Vincent was complex. On one hand, he wanted to protect his son from the dangers of the criminal underworld. On the other, he recognized that Vincent was the future of the Maranzano family. He carefully balanced these conflicting desires, providing Vincent with the training and knowledge he needed while shielding him from the darker aspects of the business. Vincent proved to be a quick learner, and under his father's tutelage, he began to develop the skills and instincts necessary to lead. Chapter 12: Ensuring Continuity. As Tony's health began to decline, he became increasingly focused on ensuring a smooth transition of power. He arranged for Vincent to take on more responsibilities within the organization, gradually introducing him to the family's key operations and trusted allies. Tony's subordinates were initially skeptical of Vincent's abilities, but Tony's unwavering support and Vincent's demonstrated competence quickly won them over. By the time Tony was ready to step down, Vincent was well prepared to assume control of the Maranzano family. In the end, Tony the Fox Campana's rise to power was a testament to his intelligence, determination, and unrelenting ambition. He had navigated the treacherous waters of the Mafia, outwitting rivals, evading law enforcement, and ultimately achieving his goal. His story was one of survival, loyalty, and the relentless pursuit of power, a true reflection of the dark and complex world in which he thrived. As the years passed, Tony's name became legend, a symbol of the cunning and ruthlessness that defined the Mafia. His legacy lived on, inspiring a new generation of mobsters who sought to emulate his success. And, through it all, Tony remained a figure shrouded in mystery, a master of the shadows who had risen to the top through sheer force of will and unyielding determination. His story was more than just a chronicle of a man's ascent. It was a saga of the human condition, of ambition, power, and the relentless drive to control one's destiny in a world ruled by shadows and secrets. If you've enjoyed this story and would like to hear some more, do let us know in the comments below. And also, don't forget to like and subscribe. It helps us a lot. Thanks.